Hello everyone, I'm Chava Peribán. This is Heritage Mezcal, and today I am here with Sophie. Sophie, may you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, gracias. Well, I'm Sophie. I was born and raised here in Mexico City, and I don't know, I've been in this industry or hospitality industry for 7 years now.
Oh, wow.
And 5 years only based on agave spirits. And well, yeah, I'm a Chilanga based.
But you're also super young. So
Sí.
people have to understand what you're saying, 7 years. That's been most of your professional life dedicated to this,
Sí,
right?
like literally my whole life, professional life.
I mean, it's a great life to have, right?
Sí, it's beautiful.
And I think today we're in Salon de Agave, which is, I don't know why sometimes I forget about the names of places. Like it's super dangerous, really close to me represent the place. But you have a sign here, so it's very easy for me to remember. We're here in Salon de Agave. And I think that, we were talking about things before with Megs and with other people. And for me, something that I find like also dedicating my life to agave spirits is that this is something that sometimes is hard to share with others because you care so much about this. And sometimes when you sit down on a table and you're like, hey guys, try this, try that, you look like a crazy alcoholic. And you're like, no. Like, it's not like I'm telling you to drink bottles. I'm telling you to try stuff. So I think that everybody that is into agave spirits has had this experience, right? Like they have the experience of trying to share something they truly love and then finding that it's a little bit hard to do so. And if I understand correctly, here in Salon, what you do and what you have specialized a lot is doing some of the most extravagant tastings that are available in Mexico City. So I think my first question is, when you are using such incredible vast range of challenging spirits, how do you share this beauty without scaring people? I don't know if that was the right way of...
No, I love it. It's super interesting because I've been in this industry for 7 years. So I started to work in a huge bar that probably everyone knows in Mexico that used to be known as Pata Negra.
Oh Lord, the things I did to myself in that place. Okay, yes, a lot of people know about it. Yes.
So I started to see how people interact with alcohol. So that was my first interaction with this industry. Mm-hmm. And I started to see how people evolve with alcohol, different kind of stuff. So I know how to read people. So for me, that started to become more a thing. So I love to study people. I don't know if that's fun to say or should I say it, but now that I've been doing more tastings, for example, then after that job, I started to work in a mezcaleria, very well known also in Mexico City. And it was more like a date night, first Bumble date night.
Okay, I love that. So according to you, mezcalerias are great Bumble first dates.
Sí, it is.
Okay, so if anybody's hearing to this, you know where to check that lady, that special lady, that special boy. Go to a mezcaleria.
Yeah.
Love that approach.
No, but for real, it was very como eye-opening because I started to see how people interact with each other without not knowing them. So I don't know, like first date, and they were just like, sometimes they were shy. So I was just like, okay, so do you want to try maybe this mezcal? Because in my little knowledge by that time, this agave will open kind of like, it will make you chatty. So
Okay.
I was just like, okay, so I think this mezcal will help you to be more chatty.
Yeah. Let's relax you first. And then
Yeah. And then as soon as I started to see how people started to evolve their relationship during the whole night, I was just like, okay, maybe they can start to go for something more fun and more crazy. So I will give the love agave. So I started to give the love agave for these people and see how...
The love agave?
Yeah.
Well, what exactly is the love agave?
According to my little knowledge by that time, it was Karwinski's agaves.
Oh, wow. I love how sexy this sounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Karwinski's agaves in these regions used to be known as an aphrodisiac, the love agave. So that's why they told us. And I was just like, okay, so let's experiment with the customers. So literally that's what I do it. And I started to see how literally people changes drastically with the different spirits that they're drinking too. So and now that I'm doing this full time here in Salon de Agave, as soon as they arrive, I start to see how people are like acting. My first question is like, please introduce yourself. What's your relationship with agave spirits? Do you know what is mezcal? Do you know what's tequila? And if you don't, please let me know what's your go-to. And that's usually how I start my tastings, because that way I can know a little bit about their personality. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, and I mean, I used to tell people that if there's a way to get to understand other cultures is when they try alcohol and they tell you back what they feel and the taste they find there. It's so interesting, right? Because, like somebody from Israel won't know how a taco al pastor tastes. So they won't tell you it tastes like taco al pastor. They will give you the reference from that country that relates to those flavors. So I'm sure it's fascinating the kind of things you extract from these people while they start tasting stuff. No,
it's super interesting because now that I've been doing this like my full-time job, and giving tasting notes is probably the most hard thing for me because I am Mexican.
Yes.
And most of my customers are not Mexicans. So every time that I try to do tasting notes, I'm just like, okay, this reminds me of a piñata, but people cannot relate how a piñata smells like and tastes like.
A piñata is
like,
struck in your face when you're
like
6 years old. Yeah. This reminds me of the first piñata I ever tasted.
So having to break down notes more like internationally, it's something very fun that we have been doing more often, but it's also very fun because I don't know, we were doing a tasting note for a churique a few months ago, and Mex and I, we were just like, okay, so this smells like a carrot cake. And I started to say, but maybe it's like a little bit of chile. And I was just like, chile ancho. Okay. So that doesn't translate to anyone who's not from Mexico.
Yes.
So we were just like, okay, so maybe we can translate as it's a carrot cake cooked on a open air, in a adobe oven, brick oven, and then you will be eating that cake surrounded by dry grass.
I love that. No. That's so poetic.
I know, but it's super fun. But now that I get to start to do this more often and with more international people, it's very interesting to see how these products can relate to any other people who's not from here. And given that experience coming from this beautiful country and put it out into the whole world is a beautiful thing.
And I think there's also something really interesting about spirits because, we just went and had some quesadillas and gordita with chicharrón and, we just ate like kings right now. And I think you should sponsor that little spot. But, I think, as Mexicans, we're super open to that. But I can understand that for a lot of people that are not used to that experience, they're going to be very cautious about what they try, what they don't try. They're not going to be as open. The beautiful thing about spirits, it's they know they're safe, right? Because they're not going to get a bellyache. They have the chance to access flavors that are very extravagant without the risk of having the Moctezuma revenge, no? Yeah. But and again, I'm just thinking about this. But I guess is there some flavors that you've realized that people are more sensitive to, that they gravitate more to? Which would you say are the things that surprise more people? Yeah, which are your go-tos? How do you play your cards around here?
This is a really good question because in Salon de Agave, we have very different level of knowledge in our tastings. So sometimes people who are more like a bachelor's party, like 12 bachelors.
Oh, wow.
And probably they all drink Cristalinos or very commercial brands. And when they come in here, the first thing that they tell me is like, I don't like mezcal because I hate the smoke. So I'm just like, okay, that's an easy one. So I think in Salon de Agave, one of the beautiful things that I've learned is that you have to be very cautious of how you share your bottles because we have flavors that for someone who's a beginner, it will be too much. And there's some flavors that for someone who's well-known or maybe just like you would be just like, oh, it's good, but
it's not surprising.
Exactly.
It's not insane. Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things to work in Salon de Agave is that I never get bored. every tasting is super different, and I can get to play with all of these kind of like toys in the room, because I'm just like, okay, so I think this person is not liking anything that is like super earthy. Okay, so and maybe they like more greener stuff, and I will bring maybe a salmiana, and I will start to bring more different notes. And usually I'm good at doing that.
Reading. Yeah, well, you said
I'm reading, but also I always ask for them to give me feedback on the bottles. Like, do you like this? If you're not, please give me a heads up. Like,
have you ever had the situation where somebody just didn't want to? I mean, if you're here already, you're coming for this, right? Like, it's they know they're not coming here to have a martinis tasting. They know they're going to be sipping straight spirits. But I also think like a lot of people are not necessarily used at this experience of having, you know, a little glass filled with alcohol and just smell it with interest and taking sips of it. How have you like? And if you have an international crowd, I think a lot of them, they like wine kits or beer kits, maybe like fermented drinks, but not necessarily spirits. How do you deal with that little situation?
I think the hardest ones are the bachelors.
This comes as no surprise.
Because most people, the way that I usually begin my tastings is asking them like, what's their approach to agave spirits,
to
and
life.
Then to literally just enjoy my country. But then I start to ask like, okay, so let me start with my favorite saying about mezcal, which is we say, or we have this beautiful saying in Mexico, that we don't shoot mezcal, we kiss the agave, right? So a besitos es mejor is my phrase. So a besitos es mejor. So you will kiss slowly the agave, okay? As you go on, your palate will adapt it. And I love to joke around that phrase, because people will be just like, okay, besitos. And then I just like start to joke around that phrase and say like, okay, it's just like as we're kissing someone. The first kiss is como de chocolate. It doesn't count, right?
That's one of the most Mexican expressions ever. And if people don't know this, something that happened but you don't quite count, it's the chocolate. It's just the chocolate thing. Okay, so first kiss is the chocolate. I'm going to write down that somewhere.
So the first kiss doesn't count, just as you were kissing someone. The first kiss, you cannot judge if it's good or not.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because it could be either great or it can be either awful. But you want to do like 2 or 3 more just to make a point if you like it or not.
Fully agree.
So I always suggest that saying, because a lot of people don't know how to approach to mezcal, even just by sipping it. And I'm just like, this is the way that I express how we drink agave spirits in Mexico. And I think this is a nice way to start my tastings, because people will start to see, they always joke around that phrase during the whole tasting. They're just like, besitos, besitos. So I think that's the way that I tell them how to approach to mezcal.
Yeah, because I think even the kids that drink scotch or whiskey or bourbon, that's still significant lower ABV than a bunch of the things that you have here. So they're thinking of gulps, not besitos. And it's so interesting that's, I like to tell people sometimes that it's almost like the amount, the size of your gulp of your drinking is cultural, right? Like, if you're used to this, your besito is of certain size. But if you've been drinking lower ABV stuff, your gulp will be bigger. And that's why a lot of times you get some people that get just ridiculously drunk really fast.
And I think also it's one of the beautiful things that I get to do here in Salon de Agave is that most of the people who comes into tastings are not Mexicans. But I feel very kind of like como pressure, because it's like I'm representing not only Salon de Agave, but I'm representing all of the producers that we have in the room. And every time that I'm presenting a bottle, it's just like, oh my God, I'm presenting these people who maybe had an awful provision, like in Chihuahua, or I don't know, like just to get to represent them. For me, it's just like a heavy weight sometimes, but yeah, it's also a thing that I feel proud of to share.
I completely agree. The pressure is insane because you are talking about their like geography, you're talking about culture, you're talking about individuals.
Sí.
And sometimes I think this happens to all of us. Sometimes the flavor and the personalities of the producers that we love the most are equally as important. I don't know if it has happened to you, but like if I drink something sometimes and I don't know the producer, I'm like, that was good. But then after meeting the producer, it's like, this is the best thing I've ever tried in my life.
It's super fun because I was in the Mezcal Fest. It was a Mezcal Fest or something a few weeks ago, and I was just like, oh my God, I think if I don't know the producer, if I know the producer, I kind of like become attached to also the people who's behind it and the stories. So this is one of the most beautiful things that I get to do is not only talk about them, is to go with them, because now I found like a deeper bond with the producer. So for me, it's very, very special because it's not only the liquid. And sometimes when I do my tastings, I try to give also the whole historical background and everything, but sometimes it's more than just it tastes good. Yeah. This is coming from people, and every time that I like to put into more words, I say like, we're drinking ages of family generations. So try to think about like a recipe that has been in your family for many, many years. This is what you're tasting right now. And it's not only it tastes good, it has a cultural background, it has love, it has como a lot of traditions. It's, for many people, it's almost like sacred. And yeah.
It is our human heritage.
Yeah.
It is what, if one day we get destroyed out of the face of Earth and aliens come down and research this, if they find mezcal, I think they will be like, yeah, those guys had some good times. Yeah. Everything else kind of sucks, but they had, but they had a great time and they achieved great things. No, but I mean, in a more serious approach, that is so important for me to hear, because I think we all get into this because it's delicious. There's no way to deny that. But I think after a certain time, there's many delicious things in this world, and if deliciousness is not also mixed with all of these beautiful things that you just described, then it doesn't become like such a great purpose in life.
Yeah.
And I think like what you're describing to me is like, you see quite a specific purpose in life while working with this, right?
See, and it's very, for me, when I started in this industry, I thought that people didn't, I was working in a bar. So people, when I started to give my whole history classes about mezcal, they were just like, okay, I just wanted to have a shot. So it was very interesting. But as soon as I realized that there's like people who actually gives education and people are validating this beautiful culture, I was just like shocked. And I wanted to do everything about the education, because for me, as soon as I started to see that it was not only a delicious drink, it was people who was behind it. And one of the things that surprised me the most when I was working in these huge bars with huge tequilas, mezcales selling for more money than these tiny producers, I was shocked, because these people live on heavy poverty, but also in the label, it's just a bottle. If we are in a bar, it's just a bottle. We don't see who's behind it. Yeah. And most of the bars won't tell you much about them, and the recognition doesn't go to all of the people who's behind it.
I think, to be honest, one of the things that annoys me the most about, and not only mezcal, but a lot of craft, if we consider craft in its, like more vast form, be it textiles, being leather, being like every material, every sculptures, all of it, is that as a country, we haven't been really good at documenting, portraying, and celebrating these people. A lot of our most talented humans in this country, they live in conditions that shouldn't be the case. And what we're doing is we're wasting all this amazing talent that I really think deserves more.
See, and this is one of the things that for me is my biggest goal in life, is to give more this kind of education, so people, at least in other countries, gets the all of these people get the validation from other countries and get the recognition, but not only like, whoa, you're doing great. Like actually they can see it and they have better lives, because by now, most of the tiny producers, or they are reselling for less than what they should be, or
no, absolutely. And a lot of them, they're even considering the possibility of migrating to the US to do some silly thing while they have this exceptional talent. This is a very educational experience, and you have like the extremes. You have Pata Negra, which is Bacardi shots, and nothing wrong against that, but that's that, and that's a mindset. And now you have the complete opposite. Do you imagine something in the middle? Like what could be like a cool party environment where you still are asking about the mezcales and you care about the people that are behind the bottles? Have you ever thought about that?
This is actually a very recurrent talk. Me and Megs have been talking this very, very often, because I've been watching a lot of podcasts and a lot of people who has like a voice in this tiny industry, in the small producers, and there's a lot of hate. And there's something that I don't like much, this hate into...
Well, like bitterness. There's like some weird...
Yeah. There's...
Ardillas.
Exactly. Yeah, there's some bitterness in this tiny producers industry. But also I think it's very related to how Mexicans are. We are very proud of our products, and sometimes this is the way and this is the best way. This is the only way. But now that I get to have the both sides, and now working in Salon de Agave, it's very eye-opening that for me now, there's a gray area in both of these categories. For me, this is kind of like different categories, like the big ones and the small ones.
Yeah.
But there's a gray area. Because the big ones has the platform to make a change.
Yes.
Sadly, the little ones don't. And this is something that I've been wondering a lot, because most of these tiny producers, or the people who are doing the education behind it, there's so much kind of like bitterness for the big ones that they don't even want to talk to them.
Yeah, they block the conversation. They block any possible conversation.
And for me, working here in Salon de Agave, is that the big ones are the ones that are looking for us maybe sometimes to do education, but Megs always brings the tiny ones into the conversation, because the whole education has to be based on agave spirits in everything. So this is something very unusual, because you won't see a lot of the big ones pushing the little ones, but now with Salon de Agave, we're starting to do that. And
I love you so much for saying this. Like, you have no idea how important for me these words are, because I mean, and I'm sorry, I'm going to talk for a little moment, but for me, this is so critical, because then this is truly understanding that the knowledge that is behind the small producers is not only that they make something delicious and rare. No, because that's also like almost like putting them in a zoo. You do this like tiny thing that is delicious, but your knowledge doesn't apply for the real world or for the larger questions that we have. I think the big producers have so much to learn from what the small producers know about water, about their environments, about domesticating or dealing with agaves. There's so much that the big guys could implement in their practices if they were able to have a more consistent and open and fluid conversation with the small guys. And the other way around, I think like, I'm not like a hipster that loves a band and then doesn't want that anybody knows the band. If I love a band, I want them to do really well, right? Like I want them to get to a point where they can express themselves in a lovely way and at the same time make good money.
Yeah.
So this is for me extremely important what you said. And I think if there's some activism right now to be had within the agave spirits world, I think bridging those two worlds is probably one of the most important things you can push forward.
See, and for me, this is like something that we have been talking a lot lately, because there's not going to be a change if we don't start to collaborate. This industry has to start to be more open and warm with each other. The people from Oaxaca has to be more warm with all of the other areas. The people from Chihuahua
well, that's too much. That's asking too much. Come on, Sofia. We're not asking for miracles.
But it's super interesting, because by now, just to read the denominations of origin is something that it's only beneficial for the big ones. But if we start to do more like a collaboration, if we maybe change the mindset of one of the ones that has the power to make a move, we can start to help the tiny ones. And I don't know, it's something that it's very needed right now. Is the perfect time to just start to do more like these kind of conversations, because otherwise it will be like the opposite. We will become like huge, or these tiny ones will stay behind.
It's all or nothing.
Sí.
And that's boring.
Sí, no.
Like that, because we know how one looks and how the other looks. What we don't know how it looks is something in the middle.
Yeah.
For me, one of my favorite stories in this direction was, I won't mention the company, the people or whatever's, but I was on the table with probably a set of people that worked for one of the biggest tequila companies. And I had with me some mezcal from Mixtero Amarillo from Zapotlán de Vadillo, made by, I can't remember his name, Tomás.
Okay.
And it's something that I love with absolute passion. And I sit on the table with them, and very much on purpose, it's like, hey, can I serve you a sample? Like, we were talking about something completely different. It was like, can I serve you some mezcal? And all of them tell me, we don't drink mezcal. And I'm like, okay, but which mezcales do you usually see? Or which, like what have, they mentioned like a few very big commercial brands. And I was like, look, this has nothing to do with what you've tried. Try it. And then you're like, we didn't even have glasses. I think I served them on their hands or something like that. Whatever. But, one of them tried it, which was a very, I mean, I will use the word famous. He's famous in developing flavors for tequila. And he looked me into the eye and said, like, which engineer did this? I was like, dude, Tomás works in a place that doesn't have electricity. There's no engineer involved in here. It's his palate and his experience. He was so impressed. And he was like, I need to know this person. So for me, that moment was so amazing, because people that usually don't give the opportunity on both sides, they are curious. They just don't know it yet. No, like I think that's a lovely thing.
See, and I think a lot of people is that we are not open to try new things. The people who are doing like these bitter comments about the big ones, or the big ones who are doing bitter comments of the little ones, you need to be more open that it's not only you. You're not the only one who makes good agave spirits. You're not the only one who makes good tequila or good mezcal. There's no way that you're the only one in the whole country. Yeah,
Otherwise, it wouldn't be an industry.
Yeah.
Nobody will care about this.
Exactly.
Because then we'll be like just one brand, and then we'll be boring as hell. And we wouldn't be able to have all the fun that we're having with this.
It's super interesting, but I think with the right platform, we can start to do changes with both of these industry. For example, I've seen it so much now in whiskey. You have the big ones, but the education is there. So as the education is there, you know that there's little ones, and there's like maybe something that is extra special. And then you go for like a single cask, single malt, which is like the most special, right? But for mezcal, you can kind of like start to create like a difference in between. Well, it's something that it can be more commercial. For me, it's like my safe area. Yeah. And then you can go for being more like experimentative, kind of like if you were going for natural wines or organic wines. For me, tiny producers should be kind of like this way.
And because even you and I, we need both things in our lives. You know, sometimes you just want to go to a bar, don't think too hard about what you're drinking. You just want to pour something that is good, it's balanced, it's pretty, it's not destroying their environment and their workers. So you can be like, you know, at ease with yourself and just like drink it, and it's cool. And some other nights you want to nerd the hell out of that. But you need both kind of nights in your life, otherwise we'll go crazy.
It was super fun because a few weeks ago I was with my nerdy agave friends in a house, and they were bringing like very crazy things, and it was delicious. But I had 3 tastings that day, so I was just like, no, I don't want to have anything too crazy. So I went. It was a good tequila, so I brought it, and I was just like, pour my tequila, a little bit of salt and lime and Coca-Cola.
Oh, yes. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And they were just like, no, what are you doing? I'm just like, guys, I have been drinking for the whole day. So I don't want to try. I mean, your things are delicious, but my palate is super tired.
Overload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the same for books. It's the same for movies. It's the same for every part of our lives. Sometimes you want something insanely good that's going to take a lot of you. You just want to freaking chill and watch Marvel film, like it's fine. So I think that other thing that I'm very, very interested in, it's, as you were telling me, you have a very rotating, very active selection of spirits, which I love because I think people sometimes get a little bit lazy on that perspective, because as you're saying, it's really hard to nail down what is going to work with people. And if you're always changing the spirits, that also gives like another level of complexity to it. So I guess my question is like, how do you guys decide which are the bottles that are going to be hosted by El Salón?
I think we always choose during the tasting. During the tasting, we start to ask these questions. During the tasting, we start with a palate opener, which is the one that we always start with. It's something easy, usually lower ABA, but delicious, good quality, just something that they can sip on and not think about it too much. Then we usually start with tequila, because usually tequila, now in this industry with tiny producers has been heavily criticized because it became a little bit more industrialized. So you can still have really good tequilas in the market. And we work with those ones to introduce what is agave spirit, the category in the whole country with tequila. Then we move into an angustifolia. Usually we do bacanoras. And then...
that's so much fun.
Yes.
So you guys bypass the espadín and you go into Pacifica. So hey, I love this. You're messing with people's minds.
See, exactly. And that's the point about choosing something that is coming probably like the same species of agave, like an angustifolia, but growing in a very different environment.
Yes.
So that's the point that we do in that one is that in Bacanora, in Sonora, it will be known as Bacanora, but this same agave species in the state of Oaxaca will be your maguey espadín, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like mind-blowing for someone who's already know a little bit about agave.
If I were part of that tasting, I would love you already, just by that trick. That trick, it's lovely. I think that's great. That's brilliant.
See, and after those two, you have two different profiles of flavors. Okay, you have something that is usually sweeter, okay, a little bit more lighter on flavor, but then you have a bacanora that has the dryness from the desert, right? It's very, very earthy. Depending on the bacanoras that we have in here, sometimes it can be sweet, but it's very different profiles.
Yeah.
So after those two, we usually ask like, what's your favorite? And then from those ones, we start to choose which ones are we going to pour.
I think it's a lovely strategy. I think the other one that I have, it's like, now we're talking about like, how do you choose per person? How do you choose your program? Like, how do you choose, like, how do you come up with the idea? Because you have a lot of my all-time favorites. You have Sansecan, you have, Campanilla, but you have a limited space, so you cannot have 2,000 bottles here. How do you select? How do you make like this selection of the bottles that you're going to have in the space?
We usually rotate our bottles. So, for example, we love palomas mensajeras from Michoacán. Okay, so
Pura Michoacán.
So we love that product, but sometimes we have a lot of those ones, but maybe next month and the batch is over, so we want to move another product also coming from Michoacán. So then we go maybe for Don Mateo or maybe another one that is called Tejemaneje, and then we switch around the bottles. But every time that there's a new product in here, we now starting to ask more the questions like, how you treating your people? If the if the producer is not the owner, how you treating your people? What's the whole project behind it? And then taste, of course.
It is, again, like it has to be delicious.
See, exactly. It has to be delicious. And what we try to do in here in Salon de Agave is also open the spectrum of what mezcal should be. So we try to go for very unique flavors that is like eye-opening for people who hasn't drink or have drink a lot of mezcales, maybe only coming from a very specific area of Oaxaca. And we know what kind of flavors are those ones, but maybe let's bring something that is very crazy from Oaxaca too.
Yes.
Okay, but mind-blowing. So this is something that we try to do a lot here in Salon de Agave.
I love it. You create labyrinths.
Sí.
People think they're driving through a highway. And you're like, no, kid, this is a labyrinth. I'm sorry. You're just starting. Love it. Love it so much. I think my last question will be, which has been the bottle that has confused you the most lately? I mean, talking about these labyrinths, like you personally, what was the thing that you tried lately that you're like, oh, this just like messes my understanding of something?
Ooh, there was two. Ultramundo was one of them.
Yes! Sergio, we love you.
Yeah, Sergio, like he literally came here.
Ah, really?
Yeah, because
I told him?
You contact him
I didn't know people actually listen to me.
No,
So
he did. He was just like in here and he introduced me the project and I was just like, oh my God. And the first time that I tasted it, I was just like, oh my God, this is something that I want to eat in a tortilla in a taco.
Right? It is. I mean,
delicious.
again, I've spoken way too much about Ultramundo and the Lamparillo. Great. I love that that's the one that has messed you up.
See, I think this one and last time there's a new Rayo Seco profile that they're just introducing that is called Marranito. It's an SP agave, but it's like palomitas de popcorn, buttered popcorn.
Buttered popcorn?
Uh-huh.
Sounds amazing.
But almost like tasty, like super fatty. So I was just like, is this the marranito? The fattiness is from the marranito?
Yeah, but for people that don't know, marranito is like little pig.
Yeah.
So it does make sense. It has a little like lardish.
Sí.
So this tastes like, if I can imagine this correctly, it's like when you put the popcorn in the microwave and then you see like there's like a little bit of butter that condensates in the side of the...
It just tastes like that. It tastes like that.
I
was just like, this is super weird. I've never tasted anything that is like that, but it was the first batch ever. And I'm just like, wow, this is mind blowing. But yeah, I think those two from the last probably like 2-3 months. But yeah.
And I said it was my last question, but I have another last question. And I said, when are you making a dancing salon of Salon de Agave? That is my question. I want live music. I have the contact of the bands. I want a rigorous dressing code in order to enter the place. You cannot enter with tennis shoes. You have to either use cowboy boots, heels, or dressing shoes.
That sounds like my birthday.
So I'm just saying, like, I think that you guys should consider opening a dancing Salon de Agave.
Oh my God, that would be crazy. Then we can pour a lot of sotol.
And then it's, yes. And then you can buy the bottle. It has to be 1 liter bottles. And I'll come with more ideas. But
I love the idea. I love salones to dance to.
Yeah, right? So anyways, that is my only wish and desire for now.
Soon.
Coming soon. Well, Sofía, it's been nothing but a pleasure. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you so much.
We have some mess of sounds outside, but it's one of the beautiful things about recording in the wild. And saludcita.
Salud.
We didn't even say what we were drinking, but salud.
Gracias.
If you feel like exploring a vast number of agave and dasylirion spirits, do consider booking a tasting in Salon de Agave. You'll surely have a blast nerding with Sofía and Megs. And to fill that belly after copious amounts of spirits, there's some chicken soups really close called Ricos Caldos de Gallina Don Luis, which have been reviewed in this podcast before, and they will get you back in shape to keep on partying. Feliz Navidad y nos vemos al rato.